Let's compare Apple's Studio Display against Samsung's M8 Smart Monitor. What is up, everybody? It is Andrew here from AppleInsider, and you can find me on Twitter at Andrew_OSU. If you haven't done so already, I implore you to please go ahead and subscribe and smash on that notification icon so you don't miss a single video. Here, I'm going to be comparing Apple's latest and greatest Studio Display against Samsung's M8 Smart Monitor. These things both have a ton going for them, and there's kind of a lot to discuss. I will try to make it a little easier by keeping things a little bit on the high level with more detail in our included post that is linked in the description, and I have included chapter markers so you can skip around to find the sections that mean the most to you. So let's go ahead and start diving into all of it. To kick things off, let's talk about the design of both of these monitors. Apple's Studio Display looks incredible with its all-aluminum body. Not only does it have an all-aluminum body, but the stand is aluminum as well. There are multiple versions of the stand for the Studio Display that you can choose at the time of checkout. A basic tilting option or a height adjustable and tilting option. There's also a VESA mount option if you'd prefer to go that route. The M8 has a single stand option, which is both height adjustable and tiltable for no additional cost. Unfortunately, there is no VESA mount option at the moment for the Samsung Smart Monitor M8. The downside a little bit though is that the M8 does not have a super strong build quality. The stand itself is metal and feels great and premium, but the rest of the machine is all plastic. It feels a lot lighter and just less premium than Apple's Studio Display. Of course, it should with such an affordable price point. It has kind of like a wavy plastic back panel, and whenever I was adjusting it, it was just moving kind of all over the place, and it has a tendency to wiggle. This is just something I see in a lot of cheaper PC monitors. It's not bad. When I was using it at my desk, kind of standard wrist bumping up and down the keyboard, anything like that didn't cause it to jostle, but as I was moving it around, I could just feel how kind of flimsy it felt. But again, it's a big difference between the plastic body and the Studio Display's all-metal design. Unsurprisingly, I have a lot to say about the quality of the displays on each of these monitors. So on Apple is using a 27-inch 5K display versus the M8 that is a 32-inch 4K display. So not only is the M8 a lower resolution at 4K instead of 5K, but it has that 4K in a larger size, which means it's going to decrease the pixel density even further than a similar 27-inch 4K display. In terms of numbers, it is almost 100 pixels per square inch lower than the Studio Display. It's 138 pixels per inch versus 218 ppi on the Studio Display. So big difference just in the raw specs, and when you look at the displays, it's apparent. I've been using the Studio Display daily since it launched, and as I go and look at the M8, while it looks good, the picture is definitely not Retina quality. You can discern the pixels and things don't look as crisp as they do on the Studio Display. Just a lower resolution and a larger screen. Even if I'm sitting back a little bit further, I can tell there's a difference in the quality and the resolution of those images. Is that going to matter? It's kind of personal preference. A lot of people are used to seeing that, and they're not looking for necessarily Retina quality on their monitors, and they're fine by that. And honestly, it really isn't bad. It's not a problem for day-to-day work, especially Word documents and the like. But for creatives or anyone who's trying to fit kind of more in high resolutions, it may be a bigger deal. That similarly goes with other specs on these monitors. Apple's is definitely more color accurate, it supports the P3 wide color gamut and all of that. And even though the M8 says it supports HDR10+, it has a lower normal brightness. They are about 400 nits of brightness on the M8, where the Studio Display sits at around 600. So in normal use, the Studio Display is brighter, and it doesn't officially support HDR. So why does the M8 support HDR, but the Studio Display doesn't? Well, it has to do with the specs that they're actually abiding by. HDR10 and HDR10 Plus is a notoriously weak spec. There are very minimal thresholds that companies have to meet to be able to say they're an HDR10 monitor. And what you end up with is a bunch of cheap, not very high brightness monitors and TVs saying, hey, we support HDR. Whereas Apple, on the other hand, doesn't want to sink to that level. Of anything that supports HDR, it's typically Dolby Vision, which is a much higher threshold of requirements to meet. It's a much better picture quality with much more contrast and much more demanding dark blacks and bright whites. So Apple probably has better HDR support than the M8 monitor, but it won't officially say that because it isn't enough to meet the threshold for a full Dolby Vision HDR display, if that makes any sense. I mean, basically they're going to shoot Dolby Vision content on your iPhone and then you can't watch Dolby Vision on your monitor. Apple wasn't about to say we support HDR but not Dolby Vision, and it just gets messy. So I understand the difference. In overall, this picture quality on the Studio Display looked much, much better than it does on the M8. The M8 isn't bad, but we're talking 4K versus 5K, much more color accurate, reference modes, a lot going for that Studio Display. Seriously, going from a 4K display to a 5K is what makes up most of the price difference on that Studio Display. What about ports and connectivity on these monitors? Apple's Studio Display has a single Thunderbolt 3 port to connect to your Mac and can deliver up to 96 watts of power. On the M8, it has a USB-C port to connect to your Mac and can deliver 65 watts of power, and it has an additional downstream USB-C port, so one additional USB-C port versus the multiple found on the Studio Display. There is also an additional HDMI input on the M8 monitor. It's a micro HDMI port, so you can connect it to any HDMI device, and thankfully, Samsung does include a micro HDMI to standard HDMI cable in the box, so you can use that to connect directly to your cable box, to your PlayStation, or to your PC that may need to interface over HDMI rather than USB-C. Let's talk now about the speakers, cameras, and microphones. The Samsung M8 has two 5-watt speakers, which will give you good surround sound quality. In my experience, these sound better than your average monitor speakers, likely because of all these smart display or smart TV features that I'm going to get to in a minute. So they're above average, but I don't think they're nearly as good as the spatial audio enhanced 3D speakers of the Studio Display. Apple actually has a 6-speaker system inside of the Studio Display, and I think it sounds really good for being a monitor. I'm okay using the Studio Display without monitors, like without external speakers, but I don't think I'd be comfortable using the M8 without those additional external speakers. The M8 has a far-field voice microphone, whereas the Studio Display has a 3-microphone array, and the M8 supports Bixby as well as the Amazon Assistant, and the Apple Studio Display supports Siri hands-free, which is great for desktop computers and Macs that did not previously have access to that hands-free Siri functionality. Apple has a 12-megapixel camera on the Studio Display, which can follow you using center stage. Samsung includes a camera as well for the M8 monitor, and it's really awesome. It's actually detachable, and it connects via magnets. So it's this little, really thin white piece with a camera on top, and there's a small magnetic USB-C adapter that plugs into the bottom. Then it just snaps onto the back of the monitor whenever you need to use it. So you can completely remove the camera if you don't want it on there. But for additional privacy, there is a magnetic lens cover, so you can actually cover up the camera itself when you want to leave it attached, but give yourself some additional privacy by covering the camera. Apple offers no additional privacy features for the camera. There's no physical way to cover it other than just putting a sticky note or a piece of black tape over top of it. So if you're looking for something that gives you more privacy, Samsung's definitely winning here. So which microphones and cameras are best? Well, I will let you guys be the judge. Here is some sample videos from the Apple Studio Display and the Samsung M8 Smart Monitor. This is the Samsung M8 Smart Display's built-in camera and built-in microphones. Let me know what you guys think. Here's the first one. Now you're going to hear what the Apple Studio Display sounds like in the same conditions. And here's the Apple Studio Display built-in camera as well as its built-in microphones. Again, let me know what you guys think down below in the comments. Do you prefer this or the M8 camera and microphones? Now let's talk about some fun features that are unique to these displays. Specifically looking at the M8, it's got a lot of other cool stuff going on. For example, you can actually connect a Bluetooth keyboard and mouse and use it directly with Office 365 without having to connect any computer at all. So if you're just editing documents, you can do so on this TV without needing to have your computer around. It's kind of awesome, and it's a great way to get some work done without having to have your computer nearby. It acts as a full SmartThings hub for around your house. It runs Tizen like all of Samsung's other smart TVs. And as I kind of mentioned, it's a smart TV. You can control it using the included remote control or through the SmartThings app. So when you're using it as a smart TV, it does a lot of things that Samsung's smart TVs do. There's a full-on app store to look for other apps to download. There are apps for Hulu and Netflix and YouTube and even Apple TV Plus. You can jump into the Apple TV Plus on this and watch all of Apple's great original content, such as Severance or these new prehistoric world videos that just look incredibly cool with dinosaurs in the real world. It can also do something that Apple's display can't unless you're actually connecting your Mac to it, and that's act as an AirPlay receiver. So I can use my iPhone or my iPad or even a Mac to wirelessly send content. I can mirror my iPad, I can mirror my iPhone, I can cast videos, I can cast audio, I can watch a photo slideshow. It's just a whole AirPlay receiving device, just like you're casting to your actual Apple TV set-top box. It is amazing that they've added this in here. I love when they've added this to their TVs, and it's just great to see it here in the M8 Smart Monitor as well. So what do I think about these two vastly different displays? In my honest opinion, I think most people out there are going to be very comfortable with the Samsung M8. It's one of the coolest displays that I've seen. It really does have a great look to it. Obviously inspired by Apple. I love the metal base and how thin it is and very small bezels, all of that. I love that it's a great smart TV with AirPlay 2 support and a bunch of pre-installed apps. Connect your cable box, your PlayStation, and use it straight up as a TV. But then it can act as a computer monitor as well. And you can even do like picture-in-picture and use it as a monitor and watch a sports game at the same time. There's so much you can do with it that it really is incredible. And the way they've adapted their camera is incredibly smart. I love that they have the ability to remove the camera easily and the ability to cover the lens cap. That said, the Studio Display is a far better monitor. It's a higher build quality, it's better picture, better color, better everything. Delivers more power, supports True Tone, just so much better stuff on the Studio Display. But it costs a whole lot more. We're talking $729 versus like $1,600 for the Studio Display, and you're still not even getting a height adjustable stand unless you pay the $400 extra to get it. So for most people, $800 or $729 for the M8 is a great deal. It's a fantastic 4K display that looks great and works great too. But if you want a better monitor, you have to go with the Studio Display. Let me know what you guys think. What do you think about the 4K versus 5K discussion, the 32-inch versus the 27-inch? All of that. There's a lot of opinions to be had, and I want to hear all of them. Share them down below in the comments or with me on Twitter at Andrew_OSU. If you'd like to pick up a Studio Display or an M8 smart monitor, you can do so at the links in the description or pinned in the comments. And stay tuned, we've got a lot more videos headed your way.